Hey guys, this is Jenna with Hill Valley Farm, and today I wanted to go over a topic that we recently went through, and I feel like it's a really great teaching tool, and I would love for that to help someone else because we have dealt with it before, but we didn't know what we were dealing with. And so that topic today that I want to talk about is pregnancy toxemia in a dairy goat. And so what is, we're going to kind of go through a couple years ago, we had a goat. If you followed us since then, yay, you will know her name was Karma, Corey's Fancy Karma. And she had these symptoms that we recently saw in one of our does, and we did not know what we were dealing with, and therefore we did not know how to treat her. And she ended up passing away 2 weeks before she was due. And long story short, she was carrying triplets, and she passed away from something called pregnancy toxemia. And so back then, we really had no idea what we were dealing with and how to deal with it. But since then, we have, number one, made some excellent friends in the goat community, and they are more experienced in this than we are. And also, recently, and I can't remember which one because I listened to a few different goat podcasts, but Kelly Hines, she's in Florida, and she recently did a podcast. They interviewed her on the podcast concerning pregnancy toxemia. That was actually the first time I ever heard someone speak of it, in that this can be, you can get through this. They don't always die. Do they? Yes, they can. But there are things you can do. And then she has a whole protocol. And so from that, I learned that she had a PDF, and it explained the whole protocol. So I got that in my hands, and I actually had it going into this kidding season. I shared it with my veterinarian, and she loved it. Like, it makes total sense to her. And so this protocol, amongst some other little tweaks, I mean, not everyone is the same, and so you just have to kind of keep an open mind. But that is what got us through a pregnancy toxemia case this year. So this year, we bred several goats, and they're all due within a 2-month period. The one that started showing signs of pregnancy toxemia was Hill Valley Butterfly Effect, 1-star M. And so Butter is a big doe. Butter is within breed standard, but she is a large Nigerian dwarf doe. And so therefore, I've always kind of had it in the back of my mind when I, looked at Butter, it was kind of there. I know that standards, in the goat world, get pregnancy toxemia. Nigerians tend to not deal with it as much, but lately I've been hearing of a lot of more cases, and it may just be because we went through it and I'm paying more attention. You know how that can go. But Butter started showing signs. Now, in order to really recognize signs, you have to know your goats. And if you have a dairy goat herd and you milk and you show and you do the things that we do, even if you don't show and you don't milk all the time, but you milk, once a day, you're still, your herd, your animals, and you know when one just isn't acting quite right. So that was us. I'm actually the first one that noticed it. I noticed that Butter would just lay down here in the hallway and just lay here. That is actually not her norm. She's typically out there grazing and being more active. She's eating. Butter lives to eat. She is a big doe, so she eats a lot. So I just noticed that she was laying around a lot. She wasn't like super interested. Like, she wasn't as excited when it was time to feed in the evening. And so therefore it was different, So I started pulling her. I explained to Kaden, hey, I think we need to start putting Butter on the stand and feed her in the morning and at night, because I just feel like she's really big. And we also knew the year before she had quads. And so that's another thing. It seems to be the more they're carrying, the more they can, those kids are getting bigger and they just demand. So we started getting her on the stand morning and night. She ate fine. She ate just like she always did, and with her, I have to cut her off because she will continue to eat as much as you give her. So you can't, you got to watch what you give her. So we did. But we started feeding her double, instead of feeding her just in the night, we fed her in the morning too. And so that started, I want to say it was about a month before she was due. And so then we did that for a couple weeks, and I had her on the stand to do her pre-freshening udder clip, and I put food in front of her and started to clip her udder, and she did not eat. She nibbled at it. She wasn't excited about it. It wasn't something that she really wanted, and that made me very scared, because when she doesn't eat, there is something wrong. So what is pregnancy toxemia? Pregnancy toxemia is a negative energy balance. In other words, the kids that are inside of them are pulling more energy than the doe can consume. And so what that means is, in the late pregnancy, especially those last 4 weeks, the kids grow so much during that time. And so because of that, they were already taking up some energy, but now they're really using it up. And if they're not eating grain twice a day, or they're not foraging, or taking in those calories, then they will have a negative energy balance. Now, Mirabella, she's standing right here with me, and I don't know where someone had walked behind me. Trisha, she's due tomorrow. She's never acted sluggish. She's never acted like she needed more grain, or she doesn't act off, and she's due tomorrow. So obviously she is not in pregnancy toxemia, and 9 times, Butter is our only doe other than Karma that has ever had this. So it's not very common, but when you have it, you gotta know how to treat it. So like I said, we put Butter on the stand, we would feed her, and then that happened where she wasn't interested in eating, and that was very concerning. So from listening to that podcast and looking at this protocol, and I'll try to share it in the links below in the description, because I just feel like this is very, very, very useful tool. It has in there that you should have a BHB blood check, blood monitor. So it's a ketone monitor, and you use it using their blood. So we would stick Butter's tail, and like a diabetic would, to check their blood glucose level, and we would put a little strip in the monitor, and it would come up a number. So anything from 0 to 0.7 is normal. When you get into the 0.8 range to 2, that's ketonic. And then when you get over 2, that's a clinical stage, and that needs more aggressive treatment, and that's not a good thing. So when we checked her ketones the very first time, she was 0.8. So she was the lowest that you can be, but still be ketonic. So that clued us in. Okay, so she has been trending towards this issue, and now we're here. And so what I started doing, I started giving NutriDrench. So I would do NutriDrench after she would eat. So let's say you put feed in front of her. She would not eat her normal amount. She would eat a little. And the other thing is, we would offer different things. So I offered her grain. I offered her beet pulp. I would offer her straight black oil sunflower seeds. And then I would end with chaffee. Typically, she would eat majority of what I put in front of her. but there was like one. So, and then we also started feeding her instead of 2 times a day, 3 times a day. So there are times when we would get her on the stand and she really wouldn't want much of anything. She might eat her beet pulp and then that was it. Or she might eat the chaff hay and nothing else. Or she might eat a little bit of grain and most of her beet pulp. But then when we started offering the black oil sunflower seeds, she really liked those. And so it's really about offering variety. I offered her cedar tree limbs. I offered her magnolia leaves. Anything that would make her eat, because you also have the issue of when they don't eat, the rumen can shut down. And that's even worse. And so you have to keep that rumen going. The good thing about Butter, she always ate her hay. She ate the hay. I would give her alfalfa. So the other thing we started doing was that first couple days when she was ketonic, we put her in a different stall at night with her daughter, and she would be in there, and that way she could have access to alfalfa, because I wanted her to get the calcium. That's another thing. We also offered her 2 times twice a day. She didn't eat the Tums. She did at first, but then she started not liking it. So I would crush up the Tums and put it in like a little bit of water, so make it like a little slurry, and give it to her, like drench her that way. So I would feed her. I would give her Tums in a slurry, and then I would give her Nutri-Drench. I would drench it. Then it got to be where she started climbing. So it would be like 1.2 in the morning and 0.9 in the evening. Or the worst swing was it was like 1.3 or 1.4 to 0.4. It was crazy near the end. But you don't want the swings. The swings are bad because that can make them feel really awful too. It's kind of like a blood sugar, when you're way up and then you go way down, you don't feel good. So we would also give her 50% dextrose, and that would be orally. So I would give her, instead of the whole amount of Nutri-Drench, I would give her half the amount of Nutri-Drench and half of the amount that I would give of Nutri-Drench in dextrose, and that seemed to help a lot as well. There's also something called a magic mix, and it's got like Karo syrup, corn oil, it has to be corn oil, and molasses, and you mix it together and you give a little bit of that at a time, and it doesn't suppress their appetite. Some people will tell you Nutri-Drench suppresses the appetite. It can, but in our experience, we have never seen it suppress the appetite. So Nutri-Drench really helped us dramatically get through this ordeal. Highly recommend that. We used the magic mix a little bit, but not as much as we did the Nutri-Drench. And then near the end, we were not constantly, but a couple times a day giving the Nutri-Drench with a dextrose. And so our goal was never to get her to her due date, which was 145 days gestation. Our goal for her, we just wanted her to get to day 140, because then I could induce her at day 140 to kid on day 141. We've had kids born on day 138. They were a whole week early. It was actually last year. Risky had her little doe on day 138, and then Callie had her twins last year on day 138. I don't know why she did that, but she did, and they were viable, and the dates were right, because we hand breed. It's not like I don't know. I'm very aware of when the due dates are, and I'm very sure of my dates. And so that's something really important. And so that is a very good thing about hand breeding, because if you're just breeding out in the field and then your doe comes down with ketosis or pregnancy toxemia, same thing, and you're not sure of your due date, then that's a problem, because really in an ideal world, you know exactly when they're due and you can induce them, because once you get those kids out, the pregnancy toxemia reverses itself. It goes away because there's not the energy demands. In my mind, initially, I thought, well, it might take her a little bit because the demands on the milk, but it's nothing like that. It's only because the kids are in. So as soon as you get the kids out, it starts reversing itself. So that was our goal, just get her to day 140. And so we did that. And like I said, near the very end, it was that weekend, and I have never induced a doe. I don't like that because I'm very pro let nature take its course. It just works out better that way. You don't run the risk of needing a C-section because they didn't dilate all the way because you induced, because that is a risk. But this was a greater risk. The way her ketones were swinging up and down, and she was clearly not doing as well because of all the things we initially even threw at her in the middle of that week. She ended up having horrible diarrhea, and it's just because her whole diet was completely changed. And so we had to treat that. We had to give her fluids subcutaneously. So, and again, we can't do that without our vet. She didn't do it, but we had the fluids. We had the line, but we can only get the fluids through our vet. And so we have them on hand. And so we were able to give her it was, I think, 300 cc's is what we gave her that first night. And really, she was a different doe that next morning. She had a brighter look in her eye. She was no longer dehydrated, because she did get dehydrated due to not intaking as much water as normal because she's not eating as much, and then she had the diarrhea. So the diarrhea subsided. We got that under control, and then she continued to eat, and the goal was every single day get through the day. And so we got through every day, and she would eat great in the morning and not so well in the afternoon and a little bit okay in the evening, or it would be completely flipped. But she was eating. As long as she was eating, as long as the rumen was still working. So on day 140, we induced her. We gave her Ludolase and dexamethasone, so Dex. And you can pretty much bet within, depending on the doe, some say 24 hours, most say 30 to 36 hours, the doe will kid. And so we gave that to her that morning. That evening, you could tell she was in labor. She labored all night and all the next day. And so by the time it was time to start pushing, she was tired, And so that's the other thing. This is why we were giving her Tums twice a day, because the calcium can get depleted. And because you've induced and because of the pregnancy toxemia, they may not have as strong of contractions as they normally would. Butter, like I said before, is a big doe, and she is wide, and she can birth big kids. Never had a problem, but I knew that this could be an issue. And so sure enough, she labored. She was tired, but we kept giving her Tums. We kept offering her food. We kept giving her the dextrose and the Nutridrench. There was, I think, at one time in the middle of the night, that she was in labor, I gave her straight dextrose because her ketones had been higher that evening, that I was checking her. So she started to act like she would start pushing, and it was right at 35 to 36 hours. And of course, we were here, we were ready for them. We figured she had quads, just as she was absolutely massive. And so she started pushed out the first 3 kids, no problem whatsoever. One of them was breech. I mean, it was just but she pushed them out beautifully, like she always does. By the time it was time to push out the 4th kid, poor Butter was panting. She was tired. She was done. And so I ended up having to go in and get that kid. Well, of course, he was the biggest buckling, and he had his head down. And so I had to flip his nose up, get him repositioned to come out, and I got him out. Because I went in, now we have to do antibiotics. So We started her on noracillin, which is really the same thing as Pen G. And we gave that to her twice a day for, I think I ended up giving it to her for 7 days because I was also concerned. She did spike a temp the next day. We were concerned about aspiration pneumonia because of all the drenching we had to do. And so we kept her on that for 7 days, twice a day. Gave her some Banamine for a few days to just, help anti-inflammatory, but also keep the temp down. And she recovered beautifully. Now, she did have quads. She had 3 bucks and a doe. Every one of those were big animal. Like, they were big. They were big babies. They weren't tiny. They weren't spindly. They weren't, one wasn't not, as healthy as the others. They were all 4 big and healthy. So we chose to pull 2. Not because she couldn't handle it, but this was a huge ordeal. So she had pregnancy toxemia, a really long labor. She's finally done. And now she's got these 4 kids that she's got to take care of. And she was more interested, because she is such a good mother, in taking care of her kids than eating, or taking care of her kids than drinking the warm molasses water. And so that's not, normally they suck the warm molasses water down. We give that every time a doe has kids. As soon as she is done, we give her warm molasses water, and they suck it down because it helps them. It gives them a boost. So we took 2, and she was fine with that. We took them in. We just started bottle feeding them, and so we have 2 bottle bucklings. But it took the load off of her. She's in there looking at me. She knows I'm talking about her. I'm talking about you. But she is able to feed a freaking army. And so we have been using her milk, obviously. And it has been going well for the little bucklings. Now, one of them, he's going to go home. The owners are going to use whole milk. So I have him on whole milk. But the other one, he's on the goat's milk. And she's got a surplus, and so it's just been really nice to have on hand for those babies. And they've been growing and doing great. Hers that she has on her are even bigger. I mean, she feeds them like crazy. But I actually, because I was curious, checked her ketones like a day after like 24 hours after, and it was totally normal. They were totally back to normal, and she was doing great. And so I'm very relieved and happy that we got her through that. I wasn't sure. There was a time when, especially when she came down with the diarrhea and all that, I thought we might end up losing our butter, But fortunately we didn't. But we didn't because we have friends that are experienced. I talked to my 2 friends this entire time throughout this whole process. They helped guide us, give us ideas. I mean, we would shoot ideas back and forth. But also because of the protocol that Kelly Hines put out for the goat community. I cannot thank her enough, because number one, for the podcast, for having her on, because I would have never ever known about this protocol had I not heard this podcast. And the light bulb, it's like a light bulb goes off. It made total sense to me. I'm a nurse, and so it made total sense. All of it. Negative energy balance. Continue to eat like small meals. Okay, I can do that. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about today, because it was an ordeal. And it wasn't just, it's not like we just have butter. We had kids on the ground, mamas to milk, strip out, because we're not, the kids are getting the milk, but we are stripping them out twice a day. And then we have butter here. That's got pregnancy toxemia. It's in the middle. It's almost spring break, so that also meant that we had a slew of kids coming and new moms and all that. So it was a very, very stressful, busy time, but we got through it, and I am, like I said, so thankful that we did. And not only did we, were we successful in keeping butter, but we also have 4 beautiful kids. And so Caden wants to retain the doe, which is fine. He worked really hard for this doe. and her name will be Hill Valley G peanut butter, because butter was bred to struck golden, and so we are keeping her, and then we're selling the buck. So the little doe and the buck that is on butter are polled, and then the ones that we pulled are they need to be disbudded. So that wasn't planned. Like, we didn't. I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't even thinking about polled or disbudded at that time when we pulled them. But so we have 2 bottle kids. One is sold, and the other is available. So if you know anyone that needs a bottle kid, I got one. But I wanted to go over this because, again, it is something that is not easy to do, and so I hope it helps you. I hope this was nice and educational. I will have some pictures and just kind of show you some of the things that we did and went through, and then of course the end when she had her kids. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing, and also hit that thumbs up. It helps us more than you know. Feel free to comment if you have any questions, or you have a situation that you need to talk to me about. Just let me know. We have obviously Facebook, Instagram. We're on TikTok now, so be sure to find us on TikTok, and also, of course, our website. And so thank you guys so much for watching, and until we see you guys again, I hope you have an awesome Goat Field Day.
Are you going to finish that? No, I don't want it. It's just, if you're not gonna have it, then, can't let it go to waste, right? Right?
She says no, I say no. Wait your turn.